I am not sitting there." The words from the woman, sharp as glass, sliced through the cabin of Transatlantic Air Flight 112. The target of her fury, a 17-year-old boy in a tracksuit just trying to get home. She saw a threat, a problem, someone unfit to share her armrest. What she didn't see was the heavy, custom-made case in his lap. She didn't see the exhaustion of a champion, and she had no idea that by the time the plane landed, the entire flight crew, including the captain, would be standing in the aisle to give this very boy a salute. And her own life would be in ruins. The air inside John F. Kennedy International Airport's Terminal 4 was a familiar soup of anxiety, stale coffee, and fleeting perfume. It was 8 p.m. on a Tuesday, and the gate for Transatlantic Air Flight 112 to London Heathrow was a microcosm of societal collapse. Business travelers reviewed presentations on glowing laptops, families tried to wrangle sugar-high children, and students sat on their luggage, sharing earbuds. In the middle of this chaos, almost invisible, sat Elias Thorne. At 17, Elias was a study in coiled potential. He was tall, with the lean, sculpted muscles of a runner, but he held himself with an intentional quietness, as if trying to take up less space. He wore a simple grey Team USA tracksuit, no logos visible unless you looked closely at the zipper, and a pair of noise-cancelling headphones that were his only shield against the world. He was exhausted. It wasn't just the bone-deep weariness from the connecting flight from Paris. It was the exhaustion of the last 4 years, all culminating in a 4-minute, 15-second blur of pain and glory 48 hours ago. In his lap, he nursed his carry-on, a heavy, unadorned, black pelican-style case. It never left his sight. Inside it, nestled in custom-cut foam, was a piece of gold, heavier than he ever imagined, attached to a striped ribbon. A few rows over, Caroline Mercer was vibrating with a different kind of energy. She was 48, dressed in a severe navy blue pantsuit from Armani, and her blonde hair was pulled into a chignon so tight it seemed to pull her face taut. She was the acting vice president of acquisitions for Sterling Chase, a ruthless corporate raider firm. Her entire career, her entire life, was riding on this London trip. The Hampton merger, they called it, a $200 million deal. She was flying to London to make the final presentation to the board, led by the legendary Sir Alistair Hampton himself. She'd clawed her way past 3 other VPs for this. Failure was not an option. She checked her platinum Cartier watch for the 4th time in 5 minutes. 8:02 p.m. Boarding was supposed to start at 8:15. This delay was unacceptable. She looked around at the common passengers with disdain, the crying baby, the teenagers laughing too loudly, and then her eyes snagged on Elias. She didn't see a boy. She saw a type, the tracksuit, the headphones, the way he was slouched. Rude, she thought. No respect. He probably had some loud, obnoxious music blaring in those things. She made a mental note to ensure her seat was nowhere near his. We now invite passengers in Zone 1, and those requiring special assistance to board, a voice crackled over the PA. Caroline snapped her briefcase shut. That was her. She was flying business class, of course. She'd paid for it herself, as the company's new austerity measures, which she had proposed, had cut automatic business travel for VPs. She'd justified the $4,000 expense as a necessary investment. She needed to arrive fresh. She marched to the gate, flashing her ticket. The agent scanned it. Beep, beep, beep. The agent frowned. "Miss Mercer, I'm so sorry. There seems to be a last-minute equipment change. The original aircraft had a mechanical fault." Caroline's blood ran cold. "What does that mean?" "We've swapped to a different 777. Unfortunately, the cabin configuration is different. Our business class cabin on this new plane is smaller. We've had to Reseat some passengers." "Reseat?" Caroline's voice was dangerously low. "We've been automatically processing the changes. It seems you've been downgraded to Economy Plus. Seat 24B. The agent winced, already bracing. "We will, of course, refund the difference and offer you a $500 voucher." "A voucher?" Caroline's voice was a hiss. "I am closing a $200 million deal. I need to sleep. I need to work. I am Caroline Mercer. You will find me a seat in business." "Ma'am, the cabin is full." The agent, whose name tag read Mark, said patiently. "The flight is completely oversold. There are no other seats." Caroline's mind raced. She couldn't miss this flight. The presentation was at 10 a.m. London time, just 3 hours after landing. Taking a later flight was impossible. She was trapped. This is grounds for a lawsuit," she snarled, snatching the new boarding pass. 24B, a middle seat in economy. It was the ultimate humiliation. She stormed down the jet bridge, her briefcase banging against her leg. She would burn transatlantic air to the ground. She would own this airline. At the same time, Zone 4 was called. Elias Thorne stood up, his joints aching. He grabbed his backpack, settled his headphones, and held the Pelican case protectively against his chest. He shuffled into the line, just another face in the crowd, invisible and tired. His only goal to sleep for 7 hours and see his mom. He found his row. 24. "Good. A window seat. 24A. He settled in, placing the heavy case carefully under the seat in front of him, wedging it securely between his feet. He leaned his head against the cool plastic of the window, closed his eyes, and was halfway to sleep before the first-class passengers had even finished boarding. And then a shadow fell over him. "Excuse me." Elias opened his eyes. The woman from the gate, the one who looked like she could curdle milk with a glance, was standing in the aisle, holding a boarding pass with a look of pure disgust. She was looking at him. No, she was glaring. "You're in my row," she stated. Elias checked his pass. 24A, he pointed. "I'm 24A. And I," she said, her voice dripping with venom, "am 24B. Now move so I can try to get settled." Elias, polite by nature, unbuckled and stepped partially into the aisle to let her pass. She didn't just pass, she shoved her designer bag into the middle seat, taking up half his legroom, and then looked at him as if he were a piece of gum on her shoe. Then she stopped. She looked at Elias. She looked at the passenger in 24C, a college-aged kid already engrossed in a movie. Then she looked back at Elias, her nose wrinkled. "No," she said, loud enough for the rows around them to hear. "Absolutely not." Elias blinked, confused. "Ma'am, I am not sitting here." Caroline Mercer's voice was no longer a hiss. It was a public declaration. She turned and planted herself in the aisle, blocking the remaining passengers trying to board. A man behind her sighed. "Ma'am, can you please move?" "I will not," Caroline snapped, turning to him. "I paid for a business-class ticket, and I am being forced into this cattle car next to him." She didn't point, but her gesture encompassed Elias. Elias just sat there, frozen. He knew that look. He'd seen it before, at convenience stores, at bus stops, in looks from judges at track meets before he ran. It was a look that dismissed him, that categorized him, that saw his tracksuit and his skin color and nothing else. "Ma'am, what's the problem?" Elias asked, his voice quiet. "The problem?" Caroline laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. "The problem is that I don't feel safe. The problem is I don't know what you're listening to in those headphones, or what you've got in that box." She gestured to the Pelican case by his feet. "I am a businesswoman. I have important work, and I will not be crowded and intimidated for 7 hours." The college kid in 24C, Ben, pulled off his own headphones. "Whoa, lady, he's not doing anything." "You stay out of this," Caroline shot back. "This is between me and the airline that is failing to provide a safe, secure environment for its passengers." Elias felt a slow, hot flush of shame and anger. Intimidated? He was 17. He was exhausted. He was also, as of 2 days ago, the undisputed best all-around athlete in the world. But that was irrelevant. Right now, he was just a black kid being profiled in front of half a plane. "Mom, I just want to go to sleep," Elias said, trying to keep his voice even. "I'm not going to bother you." "You're already bothering me," she retorted. "Your very presence is a bother. This is unacceptable." She flagged down a flight attendant who was hurrying past. "You, flight attendant, I need a new seat, now." The flight attendant, a woman in her late 20s with a kind face and a name tag that read Chloe, stopped. "Ma'am, what seems to be the issue?" "The issue," Caroline said, gesturing to Elias, "is this. I will not sit here. I am a gold medallion member. I was downgraded from business, and I am being forced to sit next to this teenager." Chloe looked at Elias, who just looked down at his hands. She looked back at Caroline, and her professional smile tightened. "Ma'am, this is seat 24B, your assigned seat. Mr. Thorne is in 24A, his assigned seat. The flight is completely full. There are no other seats." "Then find one," Caroline demanded. "Move him. Move me." "I don't care. Ask someone in first class to switch. Bribe them. I don't care what you do, but I am not spending 7 hours next to him." The implications were hanging thick and toxic in the pressurized air. Him. Unsafe. Intimidated. Chloe's voice lost its customer service lilt and became firm. "Ma'am, you are creating a disturbance and blocking the aisle. You need to either take your assigned seat, or we will have to deplane you." "Deplane me?" Caroline's eyes widened in fury. "Do you have any idea who I am? I am Caroline Mercer, Vice President of Sterling Chase. I am on my way to close a multi-million-dollar merger. If I am late for that meeting, I will personally see to it that you are fired. I will buy this airline just to have the pleasure of walking you out of your job. Do you understand me?" The threat hung in the air. Chloe, to her credit, didn't even blink. "My name is Chloe Walsh. I am the lead flight attendant, and my priority is the safety and on-time departure of this flight. You have 2 options. Take your seat or leave the aircraft." Other passengers were now openly filming. The word racist was whispered from a few rows back. Elias felt a deep, profound weariness. This always happened. He was always the problem. He slowly reached down for his backpack. It's fine," Elias muttered, more to himself than anyone. I can see if there's another flight." "No," Chloe said, putting a hand gently on the headrest of his seat. "You are in your assigned seat, sir. You are not the problem here." She turned back to Caroline. "Ma'am, final warning." Caroline looked at Chloe's unflinching eyes. She looked at the wall of passengers behind her, all glaring. She looked at her watch. 8:22 p.m. They were already closing the doors. If she got off, she'd miss the meeting. Her career would be over. Her rage was acidic, but her ambition was stronger. She had to be on this flight. With a sound of absolute disgust, a strangled sob of pure hatred, she threw herself into the middle seat. "Fine," she spat, not looking at Chloe, but glaring straight ahead. "But I want this entire flight refunded. I want a written apology from your CEO, and I want 2 complimentary vodkas. Immediately." She jammed her briefcase onto her lap, creating a physical wall between herself and Elias. She pulled out her laptop, slamming it open on the tray table. Chloe just nodded, her expression grim. "Buckle your seatbelt, ma'am. We're preparing for departure. She gave Elias a small, apologetic look. Elias just nodded and turned back to the window, the image of the grey, rainy tarmac blurring as his eyes filled with hot, angry tears. The first hour of the flight was a masterclass in passive-aggressive warfare. The Boeing 777 climbed into the night, heading east over the dark Atlantic. But the tension in row 24 was thick enough to be a physical presence. Caroline Mercer did not just sit in 24B. She occupied it. She took possession of the shared armrest with a sharp elbow, her sleeve brushing Elias's. She opened her laptop and angled it just so, the screen's glow creating a bright, obnoxious barrier. She began working, her fingers striking the keys with a percussive fury that telegraphed her rage. She was reviewing her presentation for Sterling Chase. Bold, arrogant slides filled the screen. Phase 1, hostile integration. Phase 2, redundancy optimization. Projected Q4 gains, 50 stores. Post-restructure. It was a blueprint for dismantling Sir Alistair Hampton's company. Elias, for his part, tried to make himself smaller. He pressed himself against the cabin wall, feeling the cold vibration of the engines. He kept his headphones on, but there was no music playing. He was just listening to the white noise, trying to breathe, trying to will himself to sleep. But sleep wouldn't come. He kept replaying the scene. I don't feel safe. Your very presence is a bother. He'd spent his entire life proving people like her wrong. When his high school track coach told him he was too lanky for shot put, he'd ended up setting the state record. When his academic advisor suggested decathlon was too complex and he should stick to sprinting, he'd won the national junior championship. And when he'd stepped onto the track in Paris, the underdog, the unknown 17-year-old, he'd run the final 1,500-meter leg with a torn ligament in his ankle, collapsing over the finish line in a blaze of lactic acid and pure will, and winning. He'd done it. He was the Olympic champion, and none of it mattered. Because on this plane, in this seat, he was still just a threat. He closed his eyes, his foot protectively touching the pelican case beneath the seat. When the drink cart came, Chloe was the one pushing it. She stopped at their row. "Mom, what can I get for you?" she asked Caroline. "2 premium vodkas, on the rocks, and a bottle of water," Caroline demanded, not looking up from her screen. "I can certainly get you 1 vodka, Mom. Per FAA regulation, we serve 1 at a time." "Then you'll just have to make 2 trips, won't you?" Caroline snapped. Chloe's smile didn't waver. "1 vodka, and your water." She placed them on the tray. Then she turned to Elias. Her entire demeanor softened. "Mr. Thorne, can I get you anything at all? Orange juice? A soda? It's on the house." Elias was startled. "Oh, no, I'm good. Just water, please." "Are you sure? We have some snack boxes from business class left. I could get you the—" "Just water is fine," Elias said, giving her a small, grateful smile. "Thank you." Caroline watched this exchange over the top of her laptop. Her eyes narrowed. "On the house? Why does he get special treatment?" "I'm extending a courtesy, Mom," Chloe said simply. "A courtesy. I see," Caroline sneered. "So the thug gets free service, while the gold medallion member who was downgraded gets treated like dirt. I'll be adding that to my formal complaint." "You enjoy your drink, Mom," Chloe said, and pushed the cart away. Elias sipped his water, the plastic cup trembling slightly in his hand. He wanted to say something, to defend himself. But what was the point? It would only make it worse. He was trapped here for 6 more hours. He decided to try the one thing he could control. He focused on his breathing, the same measured, diaphragmatic breaths he used before the 110-meter hurdles. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 6. He leaned his head against the window, and finally, Exhaustion won. He fell into a deep, uneasy sleep. His sleep was filled with dreams of running. The roar of the crowd, the blast of the starting pistol, the final, agonizing stretch of the 1,500 meters. He'd been in 4th place. He needed to beat the German contender, Klaus, by almost 9 seconds to win the gold. He'd run the first 3 laps on pace, and then, with 400 meters to go, he'd simply let go. He'd dug into a reserve he didn't know he possessed. He remembered passing the Australian, then the Swede. He remembered seeing Klaus's red and gold uniform in the final 100 meters, his form breaking. Elias hadn't broken. He'd flown. He awoke with a jolt. The cabin was dark, the plane humming. Caroline was asleep, her mouth slightly open, her head lolling uncomfortably against the headrest. Her laptop was closed. For a moment, there was peace. Elias looked out the window. Below, the first hint of dawn was touching the curve of the earth, a faint, impossible line of bruised purple and pale orange. It was beautiful. He must have shifted. Caroline stirred, snorted, and woke up. She blinked, disoriented, and then saw him. Her immediate reaction was a physical recoil. "Ugh," she muttered, wiping a bit of drool from her chin, embarrassed at being seen in a moment of vulnerability. She immediately went on the offensive. "You couldn't even sit still, could you? Bouncing around, waking people up?" I just moved my leg," Elias said, baffled. "Sure, whatever." She snapped on her overhead light, flooding their row in an obnoxious yellow glare. She opened her laptop. 5:10 a.m. London time. 2 hours to landing. She needed to prepare. She needed to be sharp. She needed to win. As she opened her presentation file, another flight attendant, an older man named David, was walking down the aisle, collecting trash. As he passed their row, he paused. He squinted at Elias in the dim light. "Good heavens," David whispered, his eyes wide. He didn't stop, but as he reached the galley, Elias could hear him whispering excitedly to Chloe. "It is him! Chloe, it's really him!" "I know," Chloe's voice drifted back. "Row 24A. And you won't believe what she—" The curtain to the galley swished shut. Caroline had heard it too. "What is wrong with this crew? Are they all insane? What's him? Are you some kind of celebrity?" She laughed at the thought. "A SoundCloud rapper? Is that it? Is that what's in the box? Your mixtape?" Elias looked at her. He looked at her smug, arrogant, hateful face, and he felt something shift. The shame was gone. The anger was gone. All that was left was a vast, cold pity. He said nothing. He just turned back to the window, and for the first time, he smiled. 1 hour before landing, the cabin lights slowly brightened from a dim blue to a warm sunrise yellow. The fasten seatbelt sign chimed, and the plane began its long, slow descent toward the United Kingdom. Caroline Mercer was a hive of activity. She'd ordered a black coffee and complained that it was tepid, and was now applying makeup with the precision of a sniper. Concealer, powder, a sharp line of eyeliner. She was rebuilding her armor. Her presentation was flawless. Her laptop battery was at 80%. She would walk off this plane, race to the Sofitel at Terminal 5, shower, change, and be in that boardroom by 9:45 a.m. She would destroy this. The incident with the boy was an annoyance, a footnote. Elias was just stretching, his long limbs cramped from the small seat. His ankle was throbbing, a dull, familiar ache. Then the PA system crackled to life. It wasn't the usual automated message. It was the captain. "Good morning, folks. This is Captain Miller up here in the flight deck. We're beginning our final descent into London Heathrow. Weather on the ground is a very London, 15 degrees Celsius, with a bit of drizzle. We should be on the ground in just under an hour. Right on schedule." He paused. The normal, dry tone of his voice shifted. It became warmer, tinged with pride. Folks, we normally like to respect our passengers' privacy, but today we have a very special guest on board. He's flying home from the Paris Olympics, and I'm told he's carrying some, excess baggage with him, in the best possible way. In row 24, Elias's eyes shot open. Oh no. Please no. Ben, the college kid in 24C, who had been watching the entire drama, looked over at Elias, his jaw dropping as he started to connect the dots. Team USA tracksuit. Paris. Caroline, applying her mascara, just rolled her eyes. A special guest. Probably some D-list actor. This young man, the captain continued, his voice swelling, didn't just compete, he made history. At only 17 years old, he overcame a severe injury in the final event to win one of the most grueling competitions in all of sports. He's bringing home the gold medal in the men's decathlon for Team USA. The entire cabin, which had been a sleepy murmur of rustling bags and quiet coughs, went utterly silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Caroline's hand, holding the mascara wand, froze halfway to her eye. So, Captain Miller concluded, please join me and the entire crew of Transatlantic Air in a massive round of applause for America's newest hero, Mr. Elias Thorne. For a split second, there was nothing. Then, a man in the row behind them, who had been glaring at Caroline earlier, stood up. It's him! The kid in 24A! I saw him on the news! The cabin erupted. It wasn't just applause, it was a standing ovation. People were whistling, cheering, turning in their seats. Phones were instantly out, cameras flashing, all pointed at one spot. At row 24, at 24A, Elias Thorne had his face in his hands, his cheeks burning a deep, embarrassed crimson. Oh man, he muttered. Ben in 24C was just staring, mouth agape. Dude, you won? The decathlon? Holy. But Caroline Mercer. Caroline was a statue. Her face was a mask of chalky white foundation. The mascara wand was still held aloft. Her blue eyes, wide with shock, swiveled slowly from the aisle, where people were now standing, to the 17-year-old boy beside her. Thorne. Elias Thorne. She'd heard that name. It had been all over the news. The miracle kid. The phenom. The boy she had called a thug. The boy she had refused to sit next to. The boy she had accused of making her feel unsafe. He was a national hero. Oh my God, she whispered. It wasn't a prayer. It was a realization of her own doom. The phones that had been filming her racist rant were now filming this. They were filming her, sitting there, pale and horrified, next to the very person she had tried to have thrown off the plane. The applause went on for a full minute. Elias, finally realizing he had to, gave a small, awkward wave, which only made them cheer louder. Caroline, in that moment, understood what it was to be truly, irrevocably, publicly finished. Her high-stakes merger, her career, her reputation, it was all evaporating at 30,000 feet. She wasn't just sitting next to a celebrity. She was sitting next to the physical embodiment of her own catastrophic misjudgment, and the flight wasn't over yet. The captain's announcement was just the beginning. The final 45 minutes of the flight were a waking nightmare for Caroline and a tidal wave of overwhelming, awkward attention for Elias. The applause died down, but the energy in the cabin had fundamentally shifted. It was now a pilgrimage. First, a father from a few rows up came by, holding his 8-year-old daughter. Mr. Thorne, I'm so sorry to bother you. We watched you. My daughter is a runner. Could she possibly get your autograph? Elias, still blushing, nodded. Of course. Sure. To do this, The man and his daughter had to lean directly over Caroline Mercer. She was forced to shrink back into her middle seat, her laptop a useless prop, as this man held a napkin and a pen over her lap. "What's your name?" Elias asked the little girl. "Jessica," she whispered shyly. "Keep running, Jessica," Elias wrote. "Never let anyone tell you how fast you are. Elias Thorne." "Thank you," the father said, beaming. "You're a class act, son. A real inspiration." As they left, a businessman in a tailored suit, the kind Caroline would normally try to network with, stopped. "Incredible, kid. Just incredible. That 1500 was the gutsiest thing I've ever seen." He handed Elias his card. "If you're ever looking for sponsorships, my firm, well, we'd be honored. Call me." Again, he had to lean over Caroline, who was now trapped, a prisoner in 24B, forced to inhale the second-hand praise meant for the boy she'd despised. Then came Chloe. She emerged from the front galley, not with a trash bag, but with the entire flight crew who wasn't strapped down for landing. Chloe, the older attendant, David, and 2 others. They walked down the aisle and stopped right at row 24. The passengers quieted, watching. Chloe's professional smile was gone. It was replaced by a look of profound, genuine respect. "Elias," she said, her voice soft but clear. "We just wanted to come by and apologize." Elias was stunned. "Apologize? For what?" "For what you had to endure when you boarded this flight," Chloe said, and she shot a brief, icy glance at Caroline. Caroline flinched as if struck. No passenger should ever be treated that way, and especially not a young man who has represented our country with such honor and dignity. Caroline stopped breathing. This was it. This was the execution. We just, Chloe continued, her voice thickening with emotion. "We wanted to say thank you, from all of us." And then the cockpit door opened. This was a serious breach of protocol during descent. Captain Miller emerged, his pilot's hat tucked under his arm. He strode down the aisle, his face set in a serious, appraising look. The entire plane was silent. He stopped at row 24. He looked past the horrified woman in the middle seat and locked eyes with the 17-year-old in the window seat. "Mr. Thorne," Captain Miller said, his voice a low baritone that commanded authority. "I was a track man at the Naval Academy. Hurdles. I know what it takes. What you did out there, that wasn't just athletics. That was character." Elias didn't know what to say. "Thank you, sir." "No," the captain said. He stood up straight, his back rigid. "Thank you." And in the crowded, cramped aisle of a Boeing 777, Captain Miller brought his hand up to his brow in a sharp, perfect, military salute. Chloe, David, and the other 2 attendants immediately followed suit. 5 uniformed crew members, standing in the aisle, saluting a 17-year-old boy in a tracksuit. It was the most powerful, most surreal moment. Ben, in 24C, was filming the entire thing, his hand shaking. The video panned from the saluting crew to Elias's stunned and humbled face, and then, fatally, settled for 3 long seconds on Caroline Mercer. She was staring at her lap. Her face, which she had so carefully constructed, was crumbling. A single hot tear of pure, unadulterated humiliation cut a clean path through her expensive foundation. She was not just wrong, she was a villain, and the whole world was watching. The captain held the salute for a long 3 seconds, then nodded crisply. "Welcome home, champion." He turned, and without a single glance at Caroline, walked back to the cockpit. For the rest of the descent, Caroline Mercer did not move. She just stared at the seat back in front of her, the sounds of her career, her reputation, and her entire sense of self-righteousness crashing down around her. The wheels touched down at Heathrow with a gentle thud, the rain lashing the windows. For Caroline Mercer, it was the sound of the guillotine dropping. As the plane taxied to the gate, the fasten seatbelt sign was still illuminated, but the atmosphere was electric. Everyone was talking about Elias. Caroline, meanwhile, was frantically trying to get a signal on her phone. She needed to get ahead of this. She needed to call her CEO, Richard Sterling, and spin the story before the videos went viral. The plane came to a final stop. The ding of the seatbelt sign turning off was like a starting pistol. Caroline grabbed her briefcase. She would push, she would shove. She would be the first person off this plane. She had to be. But then, Captain Miller's voice came over the PA one last time. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are now at the gate. However, we ask that you all remain in your seats for just one more moment." A collective groan went through the cabin. Caroline sank back, her heart pounding. "Today, we'd like to allow our Olympic champion, Mr. Elias Thorne, to deplane first. He has quite a welcoming committee waiting for him." The cabin erupted in a fresh wave of applause. "Thank you, Elias," someone shouted. Elias, bright red, grabbed his backpack. He bent down to retrieve the precious pelican case. As he did, his hand brushed Caroline's ankle. She recoiled as if she'd been electrocuted. "Excuse me, Mom," Elias said quietly. It was the first thing he'd said to her since the captain's announcement. He pulled the case out and stood in the aisle. He looked down at her one last time. There was no anger in his eyes. There was no triumph. There was just a deep, profound sadness. "Have a good meeting, Mara," he said. And with that, he turned and walked down the aisle, the sole passenger in the empty cabin, toward the open door. The entire plane watched him go. The moment he was through the door, the cabin turned into chaos. Everyone jumped up, pulling bags. Caroline was a demon, pushing past Ben, elbowing the man who had asked for an autograph. "Move! Get out of my way!" she snarled. She ran down the jet bridge, her heels clacking. She burst into the terminal. Up ahead, she could see him. Elias was already surrounded. A massive crowd was there, held back by barriers. News crews from BBC, Sky Sports, and ESPN were thrusting microphones at him. And in the center of it all, a distinguished older man in a beautiful bespoke suit was shaking Elias's hand, pulling him into a one-armed hug. Caroline didn't care. She ran, following the signs for arrivals and baggage claim. Her phone finally connected to the Heathrow Wi-Fi. It exploded. Not with texts, not with emails, with alerts. Twitter, LinkedIn, her company's internal Slack. Her corporate-issued phone began to ring. It was him, Richard Sterling, the CEO of Sterling Chase. "Richard, thank God," she said, breathless, still speed-walking. "Listen, there was an incident on the flight. It was a complete misunderstanding. This kid was... Shut up, Caroline." Richard's voice was not angry. It was dead. It was the voice of a man who had just lost a 9-figure sum. "Richard, I can explain." "No, you can't. I'm looking at it." "Looking at what?" she asked, her blood turning to ice. "The video. The first one. The one Ben Peterson from 24C posted to TikTok 1 hour ago. Lady freaks out on teen. 1.2 million views. And it's tagged, Caroline. Oh, is it tagged? Now Sterling Chase. Da racist Corin. Bax Caroline Mercer." Caroline stopped dead in the middle of the terminal. People swirled around her. "Richard, that's out of context. He was..." "And then I'm looking at the second video, Caroline. The one from 20 minutes ago. Racist lady gets owned by Olympic hero. 3.4 million views. The one where the captain, salutes him. While you sit there crying. Richard, I am 3 hours from the meeting. I can fix this. I will close this deal." "No, Caroline, you won't." What? Sir Alistair Hampton's office called me 15 minutes ago. I was woken up at 3 a.m. in New York, Caroline. Do you know what his assistant said? She was numb. She couldn't speak. She said, Sir Alistair has seen the character of Sterling Chase, and he will not be proceeding. The deal is dead, Caroline. Dead. No. No, he can't. Oh, he can. You see, Sir Alistair is the single largest private donor to the UK's Youth Athletics Foundation. He loves the Olympics. He apparently adores this kid, Thorne. He saw that video of you calling an Olympic decathlete unsafe and a thug, and he pulled a $200 million merger. Caroline's briefcase slipped from her fingers, clattering to the floor. Your corporate cards have been cancelled, Caroline. Richard's voice continued, flat and final. Your access to the company servers has been revoked. We're FedExing a box to your apartment for your personal effects. You are fired. Do not ever contact me or anyone at this firm again. The line clicked dead. Caroline stood paralyzed, the sound of the dead line echoing in her ear. Fired, stranded. The deal she had staked her entire identity on wasn't just lost. She had personally, spectacularly, publicly detonated it. She was vaguely aware of a commotion from the arrivals hall. The roar of the crowd was getting louder. She looked up, dazed, at one of the massive terminal televisions. The screen wasn't showing flight times. It was live news coverage from inside the terminal. The camera was zoomed in on Elias Thorne. He looked overwhelmed, but he was smiling. He had the Pelican case open, and he was holding it. The gold medal. It was huge, intricate, and it shone under the terminal lights like a star. And next to him, with an arm draped protectively around his shoulder, was the well-dressed man who had greeted him. The news anchor's voice was bright. And there he is, Elias Thorne, America's 17-year-old phenom, being greeted here at Heathrow by none other than Sir Alistair Hampton himself. Caroline Mercer's vision tunneled. Sir Alistair Hampton, the man whose company she was supposed to gut, the man she had flown 3,000 miles to meet, the man who had just had her fired. He was here. The anchor continued. Sir Alistair, a renowned patron of amateur sports, personally sponsored the Paris Olympic coverage for the BBC, and has been, quote, Elias Thorne's biggest fan. He was here to greet the young champion personally, and welcome him to London. It all crashed down on her. Sir Alistair hadn't just seen the video. He was the subject of the video's fallout. He hadn't just cancelled the deal because he was a fan. He had cancelled the deal because Caroline had insulted, assaulted, and tried to deplane the very symbol of youthful potential that he had built his philanthropic legacy on. On the screen, Sir Alistair leaned into a microphone. We, all of Great Britain, are proud of what this young man represents, Sir Alistair said, his voice a warm, aristocratic rumble. He represents dedication, honour, and grace under pressure. Qualities that, it seems, are in very short supply these days. As he said it, he seemed to look right at the camera, right at her. Caroline's phone buzzed again. It was a text from her, now former, subordinate. It's everywhere. The video of the salute. Chloe, the flight attendant, posted her own statement. She tagged Sir Alistair. He saw it all before we even landed. Oh my God, Caroline. The videos hadn't just gone viral to the public. They had been sent directly to the one man in the world who could ruin her. The flight crew, the other passengers. They hadn't just been witnesses. They had been her executioners. She was finished. Not just fired. Blacklisted. The racist VP from the flight. No firm in London, New York, or Hong Kong would touch her. She had built her entire life on a foundation of arrogance. and the 17-year-old boy she had dismissed as nothing had just pulled the cornerstone. She bent down, slowly, to pick up her briefcase, a symbol of a life that was now over. On the television, Sir Alistair Hampton was leading Elias Thorne through the crowd. "Come, son," he was saying. "I have my car waiting. You look exhausted. Let's get you home." Caroline Mercer turned and walked the other way toward the currency exchange, her cancelled corporate card heavy in her hand. She had to figure out how to pay for a bus ticket to the cheapest, most anonymous hotel in London. She was just another face in the crowd, invisible and tired, her only goal to find a place to hide. 2 years passed. The digital echoes of transatlantic air flight 112 had faded for the public. But for the two main participants, those echoes had shaped their new realities. The name Caroline Mercer ceased to exist. After 6 months of being a global pariah, unable to get even a single job interview, she had legally changed her name. She was now Anne, a quiet, greying woman who lived in a small, damp flat in a town outside Manchester. The Armani suits had been sold for pennies, traded for second-hand sweaters that perpetually smelled of mothballs. She was now a contract bookkeeper, working remotely for small businesses that never saw her face. Her life was a landscape of spreadsheets, lukewarm tea, and a profound, crushing silence. She no longer read the news. She didn't own a television. She avoided all forms of social media. The arrogance that had been her fuel was gone, replaced by a brittle, hollow fear. Every time she saw a young black man walking down the street, she would cross to the other side, not out of malice anymore, but out of a deep, sickening shame. The name Elias Thorne, however, was etched onto the world. He was 19 now, and his face was on billboards from New York to Tokyo. But the fame hadn't corrupted him. It had focused him. Mentored by Sir Alistair Hampton, who had become a surrogate uncle, Elias had poured his sponsorship money not into cars, but into the Thorne Foundation, a non-profit dedicated to providing equipment and coaching to underprivileged junior athletes. He'd handled the Flight 112 incident with a preternatural grace, steadfastly refusing to name the woman in any interview. She was having a bad day, he'd said once, and never spoke of it again. This act of quiet strength, more than the gold medal, had defined his public image. He was the champion who didn't need to gloat, the man whose character was his true strength. He was flying from JFK to London for the prestigious Diamond League meet. This time he was not in Zone 4. At the gate, a uniformed transatlantic agent was waiting for him. "Mr. Thorne, a pleasure. I'm Sarah, the lead gate agent. Please let me escort you." She personally walked him down the jet bridge, ahead of the first-class line, onto the waiting 7 "Welcome aboard, Mr. Thorne." The flight attendant, Michael, greeted him, his eyes bright with recognition. "Your suite is 1A, right this way. Window seat, as you requested." Elias smiled, the same quiet, genuine smile. "Thank you. This is amazing." He settled into the massive, pod-like seat. It had its own sliding door, a 24-inch screen, and more personal space than his first apartment. He accepted a glass of sparkling water, declining the champagne, and stowed his small backpack. The rest of the plane began to board. He heard the familiar din of passengers, the thunk of roller bags, the chatter. He idly watched the line of people shuffling past the first-class cabin on their way to the back. And then he saw her. The economy boarding line had paused, a temporary bottleneck. A woman was standing in the galley, right at the threshold of his open suite, waiting for the line to move. She was in a cheap polyester pantsuit. Her hair, pulled back in a severe bun, was more salt than pepper now. Her face was gaunt, etched with lines of permanent anxiety. She clutched a worn, off-brand boarding pass. It was Caroline. She hadn't looked at him. She was staring at her feet, a passenger in the last boarding zone, just trying to find a place for her single, battered carry-on. She looked up, desperate for the line to move, and her eyes, by pure, cruel chance, met his. For a full, agonizing 4 seconds, the universe froze, Elias in his palatial suite, holding a crystal glass of water, Caroline in the aisle, clutching a paper ticket, a ghost at the feast. Her eyes widened. The recognition was not just a spark, it was a full-body electrocution. She saw him, and in seeing him, she saw everything. The sweet, the success, the effortless comfort. She saw the champion she had tried to kick off the plane. She saw the man whose life she had inadvertently launched into the stratosphere, while her own had been incinerated on re-entry. A sound, a small, choked gasp, escaped her lips. Her hand, the one holding the boarding pass, trembled. She stumbled, bumping into the bulkhead of his suite. "Ma'am?" Michael, the flight attendant, said, turning to her. "Are you all right? Please, keep moving. The aisle is—" Sorry, she stammered, her face a mask of chalky, blood-drained horror. She wouldn't look at Elias again. She couldn't. She turned and fled, pushing past the person behind her, desperate to get to the dark anonymity of the economy cabin. She found her seat, 38E, a middle seat by the lavatories. She collapsed into it, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She had spent 2 years running from that moment, and now it was here. He hadn't said a word. He didn't have to. His very existence was her judgment. Back in 1A, Elias let out a long, slow breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. He felt a pang, but it wasn't victory. It wasn't karma. It was a deep, profound, and hollow sadness. He had won. But looking at her, he didn't feel like a winner. He just felt older. Michael, the flight attendant, returned, sliding the small closet door shut. "Sorry about that, Mr. Thorne. Some people just get overwhelmed by the flight." He smiled, oblivious. "Now, we're about to close the main door. Can I get you anything else before we depart? A warm towel? An amenity kit?" Elias looked away from the curtain that separated his world from hers. He turned his full attention to Michael and gave him that same, steady, $1,000,000 smile. "No, thank you," he said, his voice calm and clear. "I'm fine. Just water is perfect. I'm just happy to be on the flight." He leaned his head back against the plush leather headrest, closed his eyes, and consciously let the image of Carolyn Mercer fade. He didn't think about the past. He thought about the race ahead, the crisp London air, the spring of the track beneath his spikes, the roar of the crowd, the beautiful, painful, glorious feeling of crossing the finish line. He smiled. He was exactly where he was supposed to be. A 17-year-old boy taught an entire planeload of adults what character truly means. Caroline Mercer judged a book by its cover, and in doing so, she authored the final, tragic chapter of her own life. She saw a thug where the world saw a champion. Karma, in this story, didn't just knock on the door. It deplaned her from her own life, leaving her stranded at the terminal of her own bigotry. This is a reminder that the person you dismiss today might be the one the entire world stops to salute tomorrow. What did you think of this incredible story of justice? Have you ever witnessed karma like this in real life? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you believe that character is more important than status, make sure to like this video, share it with someone who needs to see it, and subscribe to our channel for more true, dramatic stories that will make you think. click that bell so you never miss an update.